So, hello and welcome to episode 7. Lucy's been mouthing 7 at me, so I remember to get this right, of the Lucy and Tim show. So, as always, I'm joined by Lucy Buxton. Hi, Lucy.
Hello.
So, been a couple of weeks since we recorded the last episode, which I thought was episode 5, but it was episode 6. So this is episode 7. Who'd have thought we'd have got to 7 episodes? It's exciting, isn't it?
You know, we've even got ideas for more episodes. That's really exciting.
And before we started to record this, we were talking about maybe we might have a few more special guests.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about what type of person we want as special guests.
Yeah.
But we will not reveal any more just yet.
No.
So Lucy, how's things been with you since we recorded last?
I had a cold.
You had a cold?
A cold. And I had lots of sympathy. So I've got a tickle in my throat. So I'm sucking a sweet so I don't start coughing.
Okay. So Lucy had man flu.
No, it wasn't man flu. It was a cold. Just a cold. If I had man flu, I'd have been in my bed.
Okay. So man flu is a real thing then?
Yeah, absolutely it is.
So,
and my prescription for man flu is put on an estrogen patch.
okay. Now I have actually worn an estrogen patch once.
Okay.
When my first wife had HRT, she had patches stuck on her bum. And one day I woke up in the morning and the patch was stuck on my bum instead. So that has happened to me.
Yeah, I've heard that happen before.
But it was in the last century though.
Yeah, that's quite funny. But yeah, I think it's a thing. It's actually a scientific reason for why women cope better with colds and flus and stuff because of the fact that we have estrogen.
Okay, is that a scientific thing or did you just make that up?
I've probably just made it up. I seem to think I've read it somewhere, so don't quote me on it. But actually, I'm quite sympathetic to men that have man flu.
Okay.
Because I actually think genuinely.
If there are any men watching this now, you
Yeah.
do realise you just ticked all of their boxes. Look, there's a female that's sympathetic to man flu.
Yeah, but I'm just a very bizarre female, so that would probably be enough to scare him off anyway.
I'm not going to go any further down this rabbit hole, otherwise I will probably say something that gets me in trouble. Not going to agree or disagree with that statement. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about today is a really important topic. Now, we've loosely titled it Getting the Best Out of Your Team, out of your staff. But that doesn't really do it justice, does it? It's a bit more than that.
Yes.
So when we were chatting about what we were going to talk about, we sort of made an analogy that the thing that care providers spend the most money on is their staff. And quite a lot of them then just expect their staff to do the job with no maintenance whatsoever. And that's a bit like spending a lot of money on an expensive thing, maybe like a car, and just not looking after it. Now, I did that once in the 1990s. I bought a Renault 25. Big car, big white car. And I never had it serviced at all for 5 years. And it was fine. Then it just died. And when it went to the garage to be looked at, inside the engine, all of the oil had turned into like sludge. They said, when was it last serviced? I said, 5.5 years ago. And it was dead. So I killed it. It was dead.
You just ran it into the ground, didn't you, Tim?
I probably did run it into the ground as well, yes. But now I've learned my lesson. So now I look after my cars. Don't know, I've cost a lot to service now, don't they?
Yeah, it's painful.
Yes. Although I did manage to have my brakes fixed for £149, which I thought was very cheap.
That's quite good, yeah.
Yeah, I think all they did is change the brake pads.
Okay, not your discs. It's when you have the discs done.
Oh, no. That's like 800 and something pounds. And the electronic-y sensory things.
Oh, I don't know what they are, so I'm not even thinking about that.
It's the thing that makes the light come up on the dashboard to tell you that your brakes are no good.
Oh, is that what it is? What's that little light that I've got up on my dashboard then?
I used to have a car once that didn't have that sensor, but when the brake pads had gone, it used to crackle the radio.
Okay.
Every time you put your foot on the brake, the radio crackled. So then you knew you needed new brakes. It was a long time ago.
Okay.
So getting the best out of our people, out of our staff. So, Lucy, what thoughts have you got about that?
Well, when we kind of mentioned this, I said it's a massive topic, which we're just not going to we're not even going to scrape the surface in this short period of time that, we're chatting away. And for me, fundamentally, your staff they are probably, apart from, if we talk it in an emotional way, they are the most valuable asset you have got, people. But some people might think that their buildings are their most valuable asset. But obviously I think more people.
I would say that the building isn't the most valuable asset because their care home has a value as a trading business.
Mm-hmm.
Take the trading bit away, the asset is massively devalued, isn't it?
Yeah,
Probably by 2/3.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And
couldn't you, that 2/3 of the value of a care home is in its staff?
completely. And if you think about it, if your roof goes wrong in your care home, you can have it repaired and you can have it replaced. But if your staff team, something goes wrong with them, it is not just something, you can't just ring a builder up and say, I need another 10 carers, build me another 10 carers. It doesn't happen like that. People are complex and they are a resource that fundamentally need to be looked after and valued and cared for.
And to use the roof analogy, if your roof goes wrong, it's usually obvious that the roof has gone wrong. But if something goes wrong with your staff or an individual staff member, it's not usually so obvious straight away. And it's only clear when it's quite a big problem.
Yeah, when the cracks appear and then it's impacted further, so on your further staff team or on the people that you actually support. So, your staff, their ability to have good awareness, say, for example, they're tired, they're burnt out, potentially lots of sickness, they're coming in to cover shifts. They won't be noticing when there's subtle changes that are happening with the people that they're caring for. So they're missing things like falls and wounds and infections, all those subtle things.
I said to a provider recently, what's your people numbers? What do you mean? I said, well, what's your average length of tenure? How long do people stay with you? How many do you lose in the first 3 months? How many don't pass their probation? How many days of sickness do people have? And you know what the answer was? Do we have to keep those data? Do we have to keep that data? I said, well, you don't have to keep that data, but if you do, you'll get a better handle on how you are supporting your staff. And I said, compare the data with the data that's freely available, isn't it? I mean, there is data out there that says more mature social care professionals tend to stay longer than younger social care professionals. But they didn't even know what the average length of service was for the people they've got.
And I think that's a historic thing with a mindset and a values level for social care and other kind of probably public sector big employers, say like the NHS, where it's kind of like follow the rules, do as you're told. You've got a job, so I expect you to just come in, get on and do your job, rather than actually seeing past the job needing to be done and seeing the person that does the job. And I think there's a great big, well, I'd like to think that there's a far bigger shift towards that. And I think that's been seen by obviously the impact on people's mental well-being over the pandemic. People have shifted the values. For a lot of people, it was super traumatic. A lot of people in social care, it was super traumatic. And then we've gone into this not being able to fill the staff vacancies and the massive impact that's had on businesses, with businesses closing or huge agency costs. And then And now we're seeing, certainly in England, the introduction of like elements around well-being and leadership and how that's supporting, how that be looked at by the regulator.
Leaders in England, it's quality statement.
It is.
Not just capable and compassionate.
Yeah.
Another one, workforce well-being and enablement.
Yeah.
I worry about these double-barreled quality statements because I think people will focus on the first half and forget the second. They think it's capable leaders, don't they? Workforce well-being. Where's the compassion?
Mm-hmm.
And where's the enablement?
Yeah.
I mean, enablement is so important. Give people the time, the tools, the resources, the desire, the support.
But it's also are the tools and the resources you've got in a way that it enables people, encourages in people, empowers them. So if your supervision is set up in quite a draconian way, where you are expected to do A, B, and C, and if you haven't done it, or if supervisions are used as a stick rather than a positive experience that's to help them, then you know what, that's not really compassion, is it?
Yeah, we should do an episode on good supervision, shouldn't we? A future episode.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can do episodes on most things, can't we, Tim?
It'd last about 6 hours if we did that one.
Well, we would. And that's the thing, isn't it? You know, like supervisions, people think, well, how often should you do them? Well, actually, how often would the staff like to have a supervision? Now, me personally, I've always been a supervision for me has to be something that I find useful. I've got to get something out of it. Please don't give me a supervision just because you need to tick it off, because I'd rather you didn't bother.
I think in my working life, which is probably quite a long time, 37 years, I think I've only ever had one supervision session, ever. And that was when I worked in a university.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in my first year of being there for 5 years. And it was like the annual performance review thingy. And it didn't last very long, and it ended up with them renewing my 1-year contract. And that was it. That's it.
Still here.
I'm
still here. So I think the point I'm trying to make is it's about it not being a tick exercise. It's about actually what's the purpose of it? Why are we doing it? How's it helping the person? And what are we talking about in those supervisions and the language we're using? And that all fits into, you know, your well-being, your leadership, your compassion, your empowerment, your encouragement of the individual to grow. Whereas I think the approach historically in a lot of environments hasn't necessarily been about that. I can remember distinctly, nearly 12 months ago, sitting at an awards show, a rather large awards show, and there was somebody sat next to me from a large care provider. And this person was a senior director. And they said, "What do you do?" So I explained. And they sat there and said, "There's no place for what you do in social care because I cannot see the effect of it on my bottom line." Now, that attitude has been the case for a long time in a lot of organisations. You've got a job, so get on and do it. Stop moaning. Yeah, we could say maybe British culture, I don't know.
But if the person doesn't do their job well, that has an impact on the bottom line. Even if they make a mistake, that mistake needs to be fixed. It needs to be investigated. It might be a safeguarding. It may be respond to the regulator, deal with a complaint letter. That might not cost extra money, but it takes manager time, which means they haven't got time to do the other stuff like marketing, like fill the beds, like look after governance.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't look after your workforce in social care, you have nothing. Domiciliary care is even more so, isn't it?
Yeah, massively, because they're isolated. They're out and about on the road. You don't get to see them. You don't get to check in with them as much. You're kind of having to either or wait for those kind of compliance check-ins or those like little care visits that you do, or if they pop into the office for a bit of equipment or something like that, or you're just kind of instinctively, unless you've got systems and processes in place where you're actually making the effort to engage with people. And yeah, you are fundamentally right. So if I'm not well, and this is something I bang on about a lot, if I'm not well, I cannot give. If my cup is empty, I cannot pour from it. So if I have a team that come in and they're tired, they've worked over their hours, they're grumping with one another, they're niggling, they've all had colds, the kids have all had colds, this, that, and the other. They're worried about monies, or they're worried about, you know, what's going to happen next, this, that, and the other. Then their energy levels are going to be down, their stress hormones are going to be up, and fundamentally their ability to lift their heads up and see what's going on around them is going to be far less. They're going to not be wanting to be paying attention to noises and bells ringing, and I don't want to go and dealt with her earlier. Do you know what I mean? All those kind of grumpy little things are going to be happening. You're going to end up with more staff rubbing up one another. So you'll end up with more disciplinaries and all those negative things. And then you end up with more things called whistleblowings and anonymous complaints and all this sort of stuff that just takes up your time. But fundamentally, if you think about your staff like seeds, right? If you water them, if you care for them, if they're in the right environment, you go out and have a little chat with them every day and you speak nicely to them. And you go out and make sure that they're watered and they're fed, they tend to grow quite nicely, you know.
One of the things I ask people when I do care service audits, I ask them, why do you work here?
Mm.
You get a lot of interesting answers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sometimes you get, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
I want to work somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But in some places, you get, because they look after me, they value me.
Yeah.
I feel I can do a good job. I like the people I care for. I like making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly it's just a job. And the thing you said about people being tired and upset, the stress hormones being up, that has an impact on the people they support.
Massively so.
Even if they don't say anything, they give off.
Yeah.
They give off non-verbals, don't they?
Oh, absolutely, they do. Completely.
And then you get one of those people complaining because the staff member was grumpy with them.
Yeah.
Well, the staff member wasn't grumpy. They just were a little bit quiet. They were a bit taciturn, weren't they?
Yeah. But also, what about people who maybe have got changes in their capacity or haven't got the ability to understand or interpret other people's body language effectively? So if staff are coming at them with a grumpy face, it might be that it's interpreted differently, which then you might then be presented with a behavior that might be
Totally understandable.
Hopefully understandable, potentially. But
however, it's not regarded as understandable because that person is now labeled as aggressive without just cause.
Exactly.
But in reality, there was a cause because they perceived a threat.
Yeah.
They just can't articulate that. So if we don't look after our staff, it's got serious consequences, hasn't it?
Massive consequences, yeah. Huge, huge. And this is why I think where historically the regulator, certainly in England, have focused on the care outcome. So did they have a good experience of care? Were people kind of looked after and safe? You know, they look at things like accidents and incidents and complaints and notifications and stuff that have gone in. But how often, and this is going to happen more, and certainly with inspectors that are savvy and inspectors that suddenly start getting patterns for lots of anonymous complaints, they'll then start going in and going, I'm going to look at the well-being kind of quality statement stuff. And they'll start picking apart the language that's used in supervisions and recordings and on posters on walls. And
some of those supervision recordings, they're just one-sided from the supervisor perspective. And there's no element of discussion, reflective practice, exploration. There's nothing. Most supervisions that I see are rubbish.
Mhm.
And it's just done, like you said before, tick box.
Tick box.
Oh, all my supervisions are up to date. Great, they're all up to date. They're all crap, but they're up to date. They're 100% crap.
I've just ticked the box. It doesn't matter. It's ticked, it's done. And I think that's the thing. I think if the inspector is clever in how they do things, I think they'll start to dig around a little bit more and pay a bit more attention. And actually not necessarily be focusing on the things that we think that they've done historically. They might not be necessarily focusing so much on that. I think, that's how inspections are going to get a little bit more dynamic and interesting. Also, fundamentally, if you want a business that is good, where you make a bit of money, then you know what? You need to be looking after your staff, because why are you paying a heck of a lot more to cover your shifts with agency when actually you could value your own staff far more, encourage them, empower them, inspire them, grow them?
But even if you're not paying agency, if you're losing staff, you've got to recruit.
Yeah.
Recruitment costs money.
Yeah, it does.
It does, doesn't it? Even if you do it the cheap ways, it costs money. I don't think people see that. I don't think they see how much it costs to recruit somebody in time. And the onboarding, the DBS, the induction, all of that initial training, it costs money.
It does.
Thousands.
I think the other thing as well, and this is something that they don't necessarily think about, if you give the individual whatever support, say, for example, people that I've worked with one-to-one and have been paid, the support's been paid for by the business. It's not just that individual you're helping. You're helping their families. You're helping their children. You're helping so much of a bigger picture that you've got far more potential to retain them in your employment for a longer period of time, because you have given them something at a point when they needed it.
I'll expand on that. You also give them the potential to develop, to blossom, and realize their potential.
Yeah.
So many people in social care don't even realize they have potential.
Yeah, massive.
But it's not an easy thing to do. Because running a care business, it's sometimes difficult to look up. Because you're dealing with lots of stuff that needs, it all needs your attention now. But they are the most important resource. And if we do not look after our team, our people, then they won't look after us. They won't look after the people we look after. They won't look after our business. They won't look after your Hoover or your hoist or your pull cord. They won't look after your equipment. They won't look after your door frames or your skirting boards.
It's funny you say that, because I saw a post the other day talking about that. Oh, how do you stop the staff from bashing doors and this and that and the other? And I said, well, hang on a minute. You need to bring that into their conscious awareness, because they're just unconsciously walking down the corridor. And I don't mean that they're walking down there with their eyes closed. They're just moving on to the next thing.
Because they're knackered from working 80 hours a week.
Potentially. They're so busy rushing from one job to the next. They're not actually present in the moment and paying attention. And so it's not just doors they'll be bashing. It will be legs. It will be feet. It will be hands. As you're pushing a wheelchair through a corridor. Do you know what I mean? And the impact is immense.
But it's also, if you are not happy in your role, bashing the Hoover into the door frame is like kicking your boss in the shins.
Yeah.
Except without the consequences.
Yeah, and then you go down Tesco's with your mate and you sit and you whinge all the way around Tesco's about how awful it's been at work that day. And before you know it, everybody knows about that business and how awful it is.
Yeah, very true. I've listened to many conversations in the supermarket. It's really interesting, actually. I even turn my hearing aids onto aggressive high power mode so I can have a good eavesdrop.
I don't know if that's something that that you really should be doing.
Bionic hearing. Come on, I paid enough for them.
Oh, you are funny.
Mind you, today I could have done with turning them off because the wind was howling in the training room I was in, so it did my head in. There we are. So
Before we move on, right, and I've got to put this out there.
go on then.
Some roles are even more of a finite resource. Like, so people doing the registered manager's role. Okay.
Shouldn't we rephrase that? People leaving the registered manager's role.
Okay, so that's really key, isn't it? That's where I was going to go with this. So we have to say to ourselves, what can we do to help keep people in these roles that we know are really hard to fill? Indeed. But actually, what I don't get is that providers are willing to pay exorbitant amounts of money, in my opinion, to replace them rather than paying for support, well-being support, intervention that's a darn sight cheaper to actually keep them in the role in the first place.
I'm going to make it go back a step there. Don't pay for intervention when it's nearly broken.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Pay for support
before
it's even started to be broken, because then it'll never be broken.
Yeah, never be broken, yeah.
But I've had many conversations with managers that want mentoring support. So I tell them how much it's going to cost. Then they go back to their boss and they come back to me and say, oh, they said that's
it's too expensive.
And you probably had the same response.
Mm.
And then, like you probably end up doing a little bit of support for them free of charge. Send an email now and again. Don't send anybody a bill. That's not really right, though, is it?
No, and you know what I find tends to happen?
Go on.
A few months down the line, now this popped up a few weeks ago. Like you, I'll have people randomly message me and I'll chat away and this and that and the other, and I'll say, well, this is what it costs to work with me. Why don't you go back, see if your employer will pay for it? The employer says, oh, no, can't do that, this, that and the other. And then the staff member sticks it out for a bit longer. And then all of a sudden you get a message that says, I'm leaving on a jet plane. Sorry, I had to go there with that one. Yeah, and you're like, but if only you'd have had that support at that point in time when you reached out, potentially they could have retained you.
But their boss just thinks, let's just go to the registered manager store and get a new one. Mm-hmm. Thing is, though, registered manager store shelves are empty.
They are. Absolutely, they are.
And it's not just now people leaving the registered manager role to go to another one.
No, leaving the sector.
They're leaving the sector.
Yeah.
They're not even just staying in care and going back to be a deputy or senior. They are leaving the sector.
The stuff that they have been through and the stress and the pressure has been so bad, they have to do everything they possibly can to get as far away from it as possible.
But also the newer breed of registered manager are younger people, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they don't do this, I'm going to work 1,000,000 hours a week. It is like, I work 37 hours a week. I have an hour for lunch. And if you don't like it, I'll go to the care home down the road.
But also what I'm seeing is that after 12, 18 months, 3 years, they're going, I ain't doing this.
I'm going to go manage Aldi or Lidl.
Yeah, I ain't putting up with this. I ain't going to be treated this way. I ain't going to do what I'm told.
A lot on social media now is complaints about the on-call. And that's something that regulators, not just CQC, but CIW in Wales, very much in Wales now, they're asking about the arrangements when the manager is absent. Everyone thinks, oh, that's when they're on holiday. No, that's in the 3/4 of the week when they're not on site. Who is in charge? Who's in charge in most care homes now? It's not the manager, is it? Who is it? I reckon in lots of them, it's an agency worker doing their only shift there. How can that be right? Anyway, Lucy, we've nattered on for quite a long time with this episode, and we're supposed to keep it quite short, aren't we? You
Well,
know.
I suppose it depends on whose rules we're paying attention to. And today I'm not following the rules, Tim.
But I'm just worried that our audience member will go to sleep before the end.
I don't think so. I think the people that like us like our shows. And actually, you know what? I get feedback where they say, we like it. And you know what? We've even had somebody say, I want to be on your show. That is like, okay.
And we've talked about it and we've put it to the vote.
And they've got a yes.
Yes, 100% yes. Couldn't be any other way, could it?
No.
There's only two of us.
Anyway, Tim, it's been a pleasure. I haven't got a clue what we're going to talk about next time, but we'll find something, no doubt.
And we're not going to do the please like us and subscribe thing, are we? Even though I've just done it.
If it helps the channel grow, but we're not really about getting the channel grow. We're about people enjoying it and getting something from it.
So, till next time, thank you for joining us. We hope that we made you think. We hope that we gave you something to take away. But most of all, we hope that we had a bit of an impact.